Thank you all for joining us. The Columbian is pleased to welcome candidates for a state representative from the 49th District, position one, I believe. And I am Greg Jane, editorial board or editorial page editor and member of the editorial board. I'll let the other editorial board members introduce themselves. Craig?
Hi, I'm Craig Brown. I'm the editor of the Columbian and a member of the editorial board.
And Colleen?
Hi, I'm Colleen Keller. I'm the assistant news editor of the Columbian and an editorial board member.
And then Ben?
Ben Campbell, publisher of the Columbian and editorial board member.
Great. Again, and we do have a reporter sitting in on this meeting. She won't be asking questions in this form, but may want to speak with you later, and she might be writing a story about this meeting. As mentioned earlier, we are recording this, and we will post it unedited on our website and our YouTube channel for the benefit of the community. And after that, we'll get to the candidates. Please take 1 to 2 minutes, introduce yourselves, and explain why you are running, and after that, we'll move on to specific policy questions. And we'll start with Park.
Actually, I would defer to Representative Wylie because I believe that women should go first. So go ahead, Sharon.
Okay, Sharon.
Well, I actually prefer to take turns, but so be it. I'm Sharon Wylie. I'm the current representative for the 49th District, position 1. I was appointed in 2011 to fill a vacancy. Before that, I represented Clark County as their government affairs person for almost 10 years. I first vice chair of the Transportation Committee. I'm on the Commerce and Gaming Committee, and I'm also on the Finance Committee. I have worked over the last 7 years. I've really concentrated on getting us to a point where we can replace the I-5 bridge, which needs to be replaced for both economic development, safety reasons. And we are moving into a next phase of that. And I'm happy to say that that was a bipartisan effort brought forth by women legislators of both parties and both the House and the Senate. We brought that project forward to try to move our region forward and get rid of the one drawbridge between Canada and Mexico. I believe that with all the turnover that happens every election cycle, experience counts. I think that there's a lot of challenges that we face, and knowing how the system works and having participated in a number of budgets and representing this community for as long as I have, I believe that my voice is necessary along with new voices, and there's always a lot of new voices. Campaigning is a competition. Governing is collaborative problem solving on real problems that affect real people. I've been really honored to be able to be the representative here. There's a lot of things like Vancouver Lake, like law enforcement assistance. One of the things I did as the county lobbyist was bring the crime lab here. I'm supporting the work to bring our academy, our law enforcement academy, to this community. And I supported the changes in the budget that added more law enforcement classes in the academy so that the retiring law enforcement officers could be replaced with new trainees. I'm happy to answer any questions. There's a lot to cover, and I will stop there.
Thank you, and we'll get to some of those questions in a while. Park, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Greg and Columbian Editorial Review Board for taking time to get to know us a little better and why the questions as to why we feel we should be your next legislator. My name is Park Llafet. I'm running for the LD 49th position number 1. I have lived in this community for 25 years, raising 2 wonderful children, and one graduated from University of Washington. But I felt a call to be in governance about 20 some years ago, and I felt that the pathway to do that would be to be involved in a nonprofit level. And I started with my neighborhood association board, the Vancouver Heights Neighborhood Association. I've served in various positions, and I am fortunate to say that I am the current chair of the Vancouver Heights Neighborhood Association. This experience has allowed me to see how city government works and to be collaborative in those efforts, bringing the concerns of the neighbors to development projects. So one of our big development projects is the Tower Mall, and working with city council and all the various entities. And I'm glad to say that we are seeing some significant plan come together. The other one would be the Leisure School redevelopment with Vancouver Housing and the new fire station. I have also served as the first dad to be president of my children's PTA, Ellsworth Elementary, 3 years. I did that. I served on the Evergreen School District Foundation Board, which allowed, again, a little bit bigger scope of how education is working in our area, especially Evergreen. And I've served on Vancouver Symphony as a board member. My arts experience, I'm a pianist. I started when I was 5 years old, and I've currently am selling pianos as well. But again, the arts is something that is coming to the forefront as we look to the Gateway Water front project with the city. So I look forward to listening to your questions today and presenting myself to you. Thank you for that opportunity.
Great, thank you, and thanks again to both of you for joining us. I want to start out with one of the issues is the state revenue forecast generally has continued to go up, at least until the most recent one. But what should the legislature do with this increased funding? How should they spend it? We'll start with Park.
So in the last session, it was projected that we would have a revenue surplus of $15 billion. And I feel that to some degree, some of that money should go back to the citizens of Washington. I know that Senator Linda Wilson did present such a bill, but it was tabled. I don't believe it made it out of committee. Also, the gasoline tax. There was a bill that was proposed by Senator Sept. I do know that Senator Cleveland actually was in favor of rescinding a 49-cent reprieve until December of this year. That also did not make it out of committee. I think it is unfortunate that what we're seeing is almost a strong arm of the trifecta of Democrat-led House, Senate, and governors, in which the people of Washington are not getting the full benefit of the tax dollars that they are seeing being put into the coffers. So I would argue, and I would push for legislation, if elected, to figure out ways to get money back into the people of Clark County and Washington.
Now, what do you mean by they're not getting the full benefit of their tax dollars?
Similar, Greg, to what Oregon does with a kicker tax. So when Oregon has a revenue surplus, Oregon gives a percentage back to the people of the citizens of Oregon. California does this as well, and so does the state of New York.
And so you would be in favor of that?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Sharon, what should the legislature do with its current revenue?
Well, the latest projection showed some increase over what was predicted in the short term and a pretty large deficit in the long term. One of the reasons our state did as well as it did during the pandemic, and our economy rebounded better than a lot of other states did, was because we had a pretty robust rainy day fund, and we used some of that. That was part of what helped keep people and businesses afloat. That and the federal money. I think that rainy day fund needs to be replenished because the future beyond the short term projection doesn't look as rosy, frankly. We don't know what the future will hold exactly, but they are projecting that there's going to be some shortfalls, and I think that we need to replenish that rainy day fund. One of the things that I was proudest of, we know that infrastructure spending is spending that creates jobs and strengthens the economy. That's pretty well agreed upon. We passed a transportation package that is probably the first in history that did not have an increase in the gas tax. We had a court case that required billions of dollars to replace culverts for fish passages. That was a big hit on our transportation budget, and the transportation budget was very hard hit by the pandemic, and some of that money was bonded. The federal dollars helped a lot. The sales tax revenue from all the at-home internet purchases, some of that for the first time in history was transferred to transportation, and we concentrated on things that usually don't get enough attention. Number one, take care of what we have. People that get elected sometimes prefer to cut ribbons than to fill potholes. So we put our resources into finishing what we started, fixing what we already have, not raising the gas tax during a questionable economic time, and paying attention to equity and paying attention to the needs of the future. The change in electric cars, continuing the research and testing to try to get to something other than a gas tax, which is a fairly regressive tax that has a hard impact on lower income people who drive older cars. So we concentrated on doing that, as well as putting some of our money down in good faith to replace the I-5 bridge. The next step will be to get more questions answered in the next steps of the process, and then hopefully our Oregon colleagues and we will be able to move forward with both federal and local support. But
now let me jump in here. You mentioned replenish the rainy day fund. How much revenue should go back into that?
I would need to look at the budget in total before saying that. It's real easy to throw numbers around. I tend not to do that. I think that a significant amount of the surplus in the short term, the so-called surplus, everybody's going to have their hand out for it. But I think that we need to put some money back in the rainy day fund. I think that that money that doesn't go back into the rainy day fund, we have to be very, very careful where we put it and make sure that it has the kind of impact that really helps people and helps the state move through what is a very, very challenging time.
Would you be in favor of a gas tax holiday?
We talked about that at great length, and sometimes things that feel good and sound good have a big impact on the budget and on projects that are already committed to, but don't help regular people all that much for all that long. So I'm willing to look at everything that's on the table very carefully, but I would shy away from anything that's feels good without real impact.
Okay, thank you. Craig?
Sorry to be deluged on another channel here. So can you, so if you both touched on it a little bit, but how would you get, if you were elected, how would you work with local governments to advance local priorities, and starting with Sharon?
Oh, thank you. I started out with local government, both cities and counties, in my professional career. and I'm part of the local government caucus. And as somebody that was a local government lobbyist for 9 years, I have to tell you that a lot of what I do is avoid. I talk people out of doing things that hurt local government, like taking part of their beer tax or not giving them the fair share of what they need in order to do what they're supposed to do. Counties have fewer options than cities. Their tax system is different, and they are constitutionally an arm of the state. Much of what counties have to do and have no choice about, they do for the state, and so the state has a big obligation to make sure that they have the resources to do the criminal justice system. That when we make them do land use, we try to make funds available and resources available. That we make sure that the Public Works Trust Fund has enough money in it to do the things that cities and counties need to do. So there, I think being an advocate is important because people forget when people are in the state legislature, they think about the state programs more than they do the local programs. State legislators sometimes go back to their city or county and become mayor or county commissioner or county council member. And the first thing they say, and I've heard them say it, is, "What the hell did I do when I was a legislator?" Because then they have to deal with it. So fighting against that lack of knowledge about local government, because that's the government that affects people the most. When people think about government, they're thinking about what their city does and their county does, or what's going on at the federal level. Sometimes more than what they think about the state level. But I think protecting the resources they have and then looking for more flexibility in the resources that they have or that they gain. And I've always introduced laws that would give the cities and counties that have cannabis licenses more of that tax revenue. That's always a battle, but I think those that are dealing with that regulation at the local level should have more of the proceeds.
Okay, thank you. Clark, how about you?
Craig, would you repeat the question again, please?
So how, if you were elected, how would you work collaboratively with local government to meet Clark County's priorities?
Craig, one of the things that we started doorbelling in March, and we started asking people what were the greatest concerns to them. And one of the number one answers that kept coming back is the crime in our region of the state. People are seeing their cars being stolen. You go on to Nextdoor, which is a public neighborhood site, and people are constantly, "My truck got stolen," and these are beater vehicles. These are brand new. Seems like a Ford or the Prius. The catalytic converter is being stolen. Crime is number one on people's mind. And I believe that what has happened is similar to what Sharon may have mentioned, is the unintended consequence. The unintended consequence of a law in Olympia, what's happening in Clark County. We have seen over 900 people, Washington State Patrol has reported over 900 people have eluded police from January to May of this year. We have seen cars being stolen at 140%. Our law enforcement police chief, Jeff Morey, says, "I am down 30 officers. I need 30 officers." And Clark County sheriffs are going, "We're losing officers because we don't even have the ability to pay what Vancouver is paying." So the Vancouver is starting an officer at $75,000, where Clark County is significantly lower. People in Olympia have to listen to their constituents. And I don't believe that the legislators in Olympia are listening to the people in Southwest Washington. That is the unintended consequence of the law, is that we're seeing lawlessness like we've never seen. People are afraid. And when we have people who are afraid in the safety of their own home, they then feel like they're going to have to take control of their own protection. And we can't have that.
So
We
should there be
cannot have that.
more state spending on local law enforcement or regulatory relief or some kind of system where local legislators meet more regularly with local officials? What exactly would you do?
Craig, I think that it's a really complex thing, and that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the just a few days ago, it was announced that the sheriff's department would not be in charge of the jail. It would go to more of a city manager style of management. Um, that's all good, but again, what are we looking for down the road? And again, I think that because the Vancouver is fast becoming the third largest city in the state, we as legislators need to take care of our people. So yes, there's more dollars, but again, I think the interagencies of Clark County, Vancouver Police Department, and then perhaps the surrounding counties, Cowlitz and Skamania, are all working together. Perhaps that we build a central jail. I am glad that we're bringing an academy to this area, so that we can attract more people into the police academy, because then they realize they don't have to go spend 5 months away from their families in Burien, Washington. So they can do it right here. And these are things that Vancouver's just playing catch up. We need to move at a little bit faster rate.
Thank you.
Okay, Ben, did you have anything?
Yes. So I know this is kind of a broad question, but is there anything at the state level we can do to help people who are experiencing homelessness? Start with Park.
Ben, I think again it goes back to the legislators working with their communities. I know that Vancouver is doing a really good job. As a neighborhood association chair, I held a meeting back in February. I brought 5 of our lead people on homelessness in Vancouver. Jamie Spinelli with the city, Chief Police Officer Chavers, who's with the Heart Team, Mike DeLay with Columbia River Mental Health, Ty Stober, and then we had another person who is the manager of the Safe Stay on 51st Street. And it gave us a good context of what the city is doing, how it's working with interagency partners. So you have the city, you have the police, you have mental health, and you also have nonprofits, churches, church groups, and other groups share that are working to alleviate the homelessness. It's going to be that one person cannot do it all, and city government or government cannot do it all. So it's going to need almost point people who work together with those communities to help house the homeless and help them to take those baby steps into getting into permanent housing. We have 600 homeless in Vancouver, and we have about 1,000 in Southwest Washington. So it's not the numbers that we see over in Portland. These are workable numbers. And again, I think that if interagencies are working together, strategizing and helping them out, we'll see some great results. We're already seeing great results in the 2 safe stays that have been established. And I know there's a third one being looked at currently in Vancouver.
Thank you. And Sharon?
Yes, I spent 15 years on the Council for the Homeless, so I came to this job with a better understanding, I think, than most. And the council was created because people in Vancouver realized a long time ago that it wasn't one agency that could fix it. At the state level, every year we have communities that come forward and tell us about an idea that they think would work on the ground in their community. And what we generally do is try to at least make it a pilot project so that the best ideas can get a tryout. We've increased the housing trust fund, which provides money at the local level. Our community stepped up better than almost any other community in the state. And our housing authority, the work that the city has done is stellar, even though the problem isn't solved, of course. But more money for housing and more flexibility at the local level, so people can do the ideas that work in their community. And a large part of this, I think, is the money and the planning that we put into making mental health treatment and workers available to back up law enforcement for people in a crisis, but to also get treatment in the local level where they're close to their families. 50 years ago, we shut down the hellholes that were our state mental health institutions or warehouses that were cruel and horrible. We were supposed to replace those with community-based mental health system. We are now building such a system very late in the process. And the same with housing. Housing used to be something that was a partnership between the state and the federal government. The federal government backed away. We turned it over to the private sector. Now we have more people. We have more rules. We need to look at more flexible regulations so that we can be creative about creating that additional housing. And accessory dwelling units, our city was very late. They could have done that a long time ago, but they didn't do that. So there's a variety of things. The state's role is to make sure that there's matching money and that that the rules and the regulations, and there are many federal ones as well as state ones, don't impede the use of good ideas that meet the needs of people in a particular community.
Okay, thank you. Colleen?
Yes, if the question of changing abortion access in the state of Washington should somehow gain foothold in the legislature, how would you vote on it? Sharon, let's start with you, please.
I would vote to keep the laws we have, and I would fight vigorously to not make any changes. I am appalled at what other states are doing. I came of age when I first got into politics. I met older Republican women who had friends that were made infertile or who died from illegal abortions, and it wasn't. It's not a place I want to go back to. I want to make sure that there's family planning dollars so that people aren't faced with those kinds of hard decisions. And I don't believe that the government should get in the way of those personal medical decisions. I know several people in my own family and in my circle of friends who, if some of those draconian laws had been in place when they had a tubal pregnancy or a miscarriage, they might have died because there would have been hesitancy. The doctors would have been afraid of being sued. I think I'm proud of the laws that we have that protect the woman's right to choose.
Okay, thank you. Park, how about you?
I'm adopted. So my mother gave me up when I was a baby in Seoul, South Korea. And somehow I made it to this country. And I believe that, yes, a woman's body is her own, but I will always side with the unborn child. I think we need to do a better job of education of people, women who are facing these decisions, and I believe that we should, in part, if we're going to, in parentheses, fund abortion, I think that we should we should fund adoption. And there are many families in our state who are unable to have children, and the amount of revenue that they have to spend and the hoops that they have to jump through to adopt a child is heartbreaking as well. So even though I say yes, a woman has it's her body, but I also am going to say that that child should also have an opportunity to live and to thrive in this state.
So you would then, if say we saw again a proposal gain foothold in the legislature that would say after 15 weeks, abortion would be outlawed, you would support that?
I would outlaw late term abortion. That is correct.
Do you think
So
that after 15 weeks is late term?
I think that when you start splitting hairs and you start going, well, we're going to say 15 weeks, 16 weeks, 20 weeks, again, that once that life form has taken place, to me, that is a person. So I would be against it. Absolutely. I would go on record to say that.
Would you vote to outlaw all abortions in the state?
No.
After 6 weeks, as some states have done?
I think that's where the state of Washington has to decide what the state of Washington wants to do, Greg.
But what would you?
We can't follow a template of, say, Missouri or perhaps maybe a more red-leaning state. I think that the legislators need to go back and do their due diligence and talk with their constituents and figure out what's going to be the tier in which we're going to say yes or to say no.
So if you were in the legislature, you would talk to your constituents about this issue before deciding.
Correct.
And if your constituents are in favor of our current restrictions on abortion, then you would support that.
I would.
Okay. Colleen, did you have anything else?
No, thanks.
Let's talk about the I-5 bridge. Are we going to have a bridge, and what else should the legislature do in that regard? We'll start with Park.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to get that bridge going. And, Sharon serves as our vice chair of the transportation. And I know this has been one of her projects that she should be very proud of. But, at what level we have committed, Washington State has committed $1.5 billion to the bridge. And out of their $17 billion transportation package, and we're waiting on Oregon. And I've heard that Oregon is not even committed any dollars. Their legislation doesn't start till January of next year, and they may actually be as far out as 2 sessions from now. And again, it's this it just fascinates me how much time and money we've wasted on this project. I do, personally, I'm against tolling, but I don't see that that's going to go away. I think that will become a part of our life. I think that Councilman Bart Hansen brought up a fantastic question in that, what about the working poor that are going over to Portland to work? So, here they're being double taxed. They're being double taxed on income tax out of the state of Oregon, and now they're going to be paying a toll at peak hours.
So how would you avoid
against
that?
Tolling, I believe tolling will probably happen. Go ahead, Greg.
As a lawmaker, how would you work to prevent that?
I think it's you're always, as a lawmaker, and I know that Sharon will be able to attest to this, you always have an idea. You always go, well, this is my this is my sales plan. Well, if the pitch doesn't go, then you're going with the flow. I think that really what's really impactful to me about the interstate bridge is that TriMet light rail does not be placed on the IBR. I have spoken to businesses, downtown businesses, owners, and community members, and they are just very, very much against a light transit system. We have shown that the articulating buses are an actual better form of transportation. And in fact, TriMet in Oregon has realized that actually the articulating bus is a better, cost-effective mode of transportation. You can't change train tracks; they're costly, but you can change bus routes. You can figure out when those bus routes how they need to work. So again, I think that yes, the bridge needs to be built, and then subsequently, I believe we should be looking at a third bridge at some point. Where do you place that bridge? Again, traffic needs to be the driver, not our personal opinions.
Okay, Sharon, your thoughts on the bridge?
Oh, where to start? 40 years ago, the late Bob Schaefer, when he was Speaker of the House, who was a Democrat, tried to find a right-of-way for a third bridge. There is a path for a third bridge. The Longview Bridge connects two port areas over the Columbia River, and that could be expanded at some point to provide workarounds for a lot of the truck traffic. But right now we need to replace this one first. There's several sticking points, but we can't answer those questions and address those sticking points without taking the next step. And a lot of those are part of the process of the complex federal laws and federal funding. So a lot of the questions that people on both sides of the river still have will be answered as we take those next steps, and we will have to modify where we're going with that. The Portland folks believe that one auxiliary lane, for instance, is enough. I believe that 2 is the right number. 3 it's not worth the extra cost. Those auxiliary lanes keep the truck traffic moving smoothly so that those diesel fumes don't affect the lungs of those black and brown children in North Portland who have more asthma than anybody else. And it keeps people who come on and off in the short term safer because they're not trying to merge with the truck traffic. So I think 2 is the right number, and I'm hopeful that the experts at the federal level and in the EIS and in the engineering area will agree with me. I think we're going to have some real fights about one auxiliary lane or 2 auxiliary lanes with our Portland compatriots. There's a lot of steps that have to happen before we get there, and the overall cost is going to be affected by the cost of materials, how long we take to make our decisions, and what the interest rates are when we get there. And the tolls will be affected by that too. For me, the biggest question mark right now is how Oregon and Washington are going to agree on those lanes. And a lot of that will be up to the federal process with the EIS that we've just embarked upon. A lot of the questions that people still have will be answered in that process. And there will be lots of regrouping to do that. There is time for Oregon to step up to the plate. Both the Treasurer of Washington and the Treasurer of Oregon are looking at what is reasonable capacity in each of the states to make sure that their contribution to the bridge that we build doesn't break the bank and doesn't keep the state from doing other things that they need to do. We will probably need more federal dollars. There's a lot still to come on that. But we had every single legally constituted group and the political group that doesn't actually have a legal say, but we're there to make sure that our legislative bodies aren't surprised at the end and kill it after all the work has been done. A lot of what we're doing is threading a needle to make sure that we don't waste any of the work that's already been done. That's expensive, highly professional, difficult work. It needs to be updated, and whatever can be used needs to be used. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, but we do want to look fresh at everything, including electric cars, changes in working patterns, equity, and how this will affect our businesses and our neighborhoods. So there's a lot to this, and we could probably spend all day, and I still would be talking and boring you. So I'm going to shut up right now.
I want to, you mentioned electric cars. Is the state doing enough to combat climate change? Is it doing too much? Where do we
I
stand
would
on
say that there are people that think we didn't do enough, and there's people that think we did all the wrong things, and we
What do
didn't
you
do
think?
much of them. I think we did the best we could, and we did an unprecedented leap into a green future and electric future. But we also have a pilot project to look at hydrogen, because hydrogen has the potential to help out folks with hydrogen cars that live in multifamily dwellings and don't have their own garage. It helps those gas stations stay alive and pump hydrogen, and all of our gas cars aren't going to disappear overnight. So we're electrifying our ferry boats, and some of the new ones are being built here in Vancouver. Yay, Vancouver! We're going to have a very busy waterfront. We are doing everything we can to provide incentives. We spent several years after letting our utility districts grant tax breaks. It got oversubscribed, and it was costing too much money. We worked very hard to find the sweet spot where it was still an incentive, but it didn't cost too much to affect other programs and obligations that the state has. So the feds are doing some things. Our local PUDs are doing some things. Private sector developers are including electric charging stations in their designs. So we're doing a lot. We still have to get to a point where those electric cars that aren't buying gas pay their fair share of what the road costs to maintain. But we're working.
Is the state doing enough on climate change?
Greg, I just read the governor's memorandum today that was released this afternoon on the electrification of automobiles. And so we, again, are following a state, the state of California, and its procedures and policies. And Washington feels that it can do a one-up game. And so Inslee has proposed that there would be no fossil burning fuel cars after 2030.
Okay, but what do you think you should do?
I absolutely think that yes, climate global warming or what have you, it is a component of our lives. But I do think that the state is going at this in the wrong direction. You know, to say yes, an electric car in the urban setting is great, but for those who living in Spokane County, those in rural areas, this is going to be a hardship. The electrification of car, say a Tesla 3 at $42,000. Where's a single mom with 3 children going to be able to buy a used Tesla, even if it came down to 20,000? You know, the Honda Civic that she's driving, the 98 Honda Civic that she's driving is what she can afford. And so you have a policy cloaked in this, hey, let's feel good about the environment, and it's very much the haves and the have-nots. And I can't say that, you know, we need to be good conservators of what is given to us: clean air, clean water, I am so baffled at times that, here we are. I don't have to take my car in for emissions testing anymore. But why do the people in Portland still have emissions testing? Why do they have a Department of Emissions in Portland? So is the air on this side of the river more clean than the air on the Portland side? I mean, there are so many inconsistencies of these policies, and I think it's leading us down these rabbit trails that we shouldn't be on. Yes, I do think if you live in an urban environment, electric car is the way to go. If you're a family of 4 and you can afford an electric car, boy, I wish I would have had one, running my kids to all the various things. But
Okay,
again,
I'm
it's the haves and
going to cut you
have-nots.
off
So,
there, and I think
yeah,
the answer to your
sorry.
question is that Portland's in a different state, so it has different laws. But
Well, of course,
any other
but Greg,
questions?
let's look at it.
Okay.
Is their air dirtier than our
Okay,
air? No,
valid
it's
point.
not.
Any other questions? Well, then
I'm sorry.
give us your final pitch for why voters should support you, and feel free to mention any endorsements. And we'll start with Park.
Well, again, I thank you, Columbian Editorial Review, for taking time to get to know me today. My name is Park Llafet, and I'm running for the LD 49 for position 1. I do appreciate all of Sharon's work that she has done, and yes, she brings experience to the table. But I believe it's time for a new set of eyes. I believe it's time for a person to represent the people in what they feel that government should be working for them, not against them. And as I have done in each of the nonprofits that I've worked with, I came in, I saw situations where we could do better, and I improved them. Why? Because I wanted those organizations to shine, not for me to shine. And I believe that I will bring that experience and that ability to listen and think innovatively, inspirationally, and imaginatively to bring a quality of life that all of the people of Southwest Washington and this state truly deserve. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Sharon.
I consider public service probably the greatest honor a person can have. I feel that there are a lot of things that my experience will be helpful to. I've seen a lot of legislatures come and go. And I believe that we need a combination of solid experience and new ideas, because everybody that gets elected comes in with new ideas. And some of those new ideas do generate hope and innovation and change. And I believe that will always be the case. I have spent a lot of my time as a volunteer with the National Institute for Civil Discourse. And I have been a trained facilitator that has gone to other state legislators to train new legislators on how to work across the aisle and how to get things done after the competition of the campaign. I recently had our speaker tell me that she could see how much that work had informed my effectiveness and how much it was valued by the people in our legislative body, and that was a nice compliment. I'm also proud that I have a real variety of endorsements. The police organizations have endorsed me, labor organizations have endorsed me, technology businesses have endorsed me, and lots of individuals who are in bipartisan or nonpartisan positions have endorsed me. I'm proud of that. I know that all of the people I work with in Olympia, as well as all of the people I try to represent, will not always agree with each other. My promise is that I will always let people know how I make my decisions. I will let them know when I changed my mind. and I will always be accessible and will listen to their concerns and their needs, and I will try to help. I believe that as a representative, it's all about making sure that your constituents feel well represented and know where they can go if they have a problem with the state. And I also believe that we are a citizen legislative body, and it's not rocket science, but it does take time. And part of my job is to teach other people how it works. I won't be here forever. There will always be everybody that comes into this work has things to learn. I still learn something new every single day. But I think part of my job is to explain how this democracy works at our state level, because that's the work that I do, and that's the job that I have.
Great. Well, thank you very much to both of you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.